Welcome to the Women Empowerment Podcast, where we firmly believe we rise by lifting others. The Women Empowerment Podcast is a platform for women to share their personal stories and experiences, trials and triumphs, to have their voices heard, to promote, inspire, and motivate other women. We want to share the journey of women leaders and entrepreneurs from all industries and sectors who've made an outstanding impact in our society, all while empowering others to do the same. The Women Empowerment Awards Gala is being held on September 13th, 2024. Enjoy an evening with over 250 highly influential, inspiring individuals. Visit our website, www.woea.ca, for more information. Let's celebrate women empowerment together. Enjoy the podcast. Welcome to the Women Empowerment Podcast Award Show. I'm so excited to have this beautiful guest, Lorin MacDonald. I mean, for decades, she has been the human rights lawyer for accessibility. She's a change maker. She is just out here demonstrating leadership, passion, commitment, accessibility, and inclusion is her thing. I am super honored to have her today as 2023's recipient of the award last year for diversity and inclusion. Welcome to the podcast, Lorin. Talk to us about receiving that award last year.
Oh, it's just, of course, the awards are announced live. And so I know I have been nominated, and then I was advised I was one of the three finalists, but I really had no idea what I was walking into.
Wow.
So I'm terribly underdressed when I went there, and there were all of these stunning ladies and men, and those were non-binary and that who had attended in the most beautiful fashion and decked out, and I was feeling very insecure. But then the award was announced that I was the recipient, and I was like, uh-oh. And so got up to the stage. I had my little 2-minute speech that we were told ahead of time. But it was just such an honor to meet the other two finalists in the category and be able to celebrate a room full of incredible women. My MP is Marcy Ian. So Marcy is there, and she, of course, is the federal minister for women and youth. And so there was just so much, and Julie Black was incredible last year. She's had the whole room pretty much in tears.
Yeah.
But I was more focused on celebrating the women in the room. And not so much about me, it was about seeing how the organizers pulled together an incredible program in a room full of women from all walks of life and their supporters, men. And it was very, very moving. And I'm looking forward to attending this year. This time, no pressure. I can just sit back and relax. I don't have to worry about my name being called or anything like that. So it was a lot of fun.
So talk to us a bit about what made you want to pursue a career in human rights.
Well, it stems from my personal commitment because I was born with a disability. I was born with profound hearing loss. And so I have a commitment from the time I was a child to advance the rights of people with disabilities. It was very much ingrained in me that I may not be able to hear, but that gives me special insight to support others. And so my values were very much around equality, justice, and accessibility. So I started law school as a mature student. Actually, my first day was 20 years ago, earlier this month. And so I saw that going into law school after already 20 years of advocating in the community for disability, that legal education would give me an extra edge. And I had already seen what needed to change within the community. So that was a powerful motivation for entering the field of law.
So as a young lady growing up, what were some of your dreams and aspirations?
You know what, Ellie, I was always interested in learning people's stories. And I think that comes from being an only child. And so there weren't any siblings that I was playing with. And so I was always reading books. I was reading biographies and autobiographies, and my family had pushed me to read books as a way of acquiring language because I couldn't hear it. And so that reading was part of that process. And so I devoured all of those biographies and autobiographies. And then I later turned to how storytelling can move people. And I thought originally about a career in journalism,
Mm.
doing human rights or human interest stories, but that proved to be challenging considering that I have a profound hearing loss. And then I moved into organizing special events because I love home organizing shows and all of that, just love it. And then the special event I was seeing as a way to bring people together, but at the same time, I recognize that not everybody is brought together that can participate. And so, as an active community volunteer with a keen interest in disability rights, I saw the power in our story to create change. And that's what brought us here tonight to share the stories, right?
And 100%. And sharing stories is so important. It definitely impacts, so many people, people that we don't know, people that we do know. So sharing your story is so profound. So born with a hearing loss, what are some of the challenges you would have experienced and how you kind of would have overcame them growing up?
Early on, my family rejected calls for me to go to a school for the deaf. And they were very firm in their belief that it's a hearing world and I would learn to live in it. So while that's commendable, it had not made for an easy life. I experienced some form of discrimination every day related to my hearing loss, and people go, oh, it can't really be that bad. And then I start rattling them off from difficulty using the phone, voice to text messages that are all garbled. If somebody leaves a voicemail on my cell phone and I'm trying to figure out who called, what is it they want, and because it doesn't make any sense. The accuracy, or rather the inaccuracy, of auto-generated captioning. And by that I mean if you go to any YouTube video and you click on the CC button, it's not good.
Yeah.
And so that makes it challenging. But on the other hand, when I request real-time captioning with a human actually writing what is being said, I can face a reluctance and sometimes a straight up refusal to have real-time captioning at events so that I, as well as others, can fully participate. And of course, during COVID, what was the one visible thing that we saw that would make communication very difficult? It would be face mask. Can't lip read through a face mask. And it was so challenging. And the other thing is I face difficulty whenever I'm traveling, be it on the ground, in the air, airports, airplanes, taxis, buses, public transportation. There tend to not be visual alert for what is being said.
Mm.
So sometimes there could be an announcement made on a plane or in an airport that doesn't have a visual piece to it. Or if you're sitting on the streetcar or on the subway, and then suddenly a stop comes up and everybody gets off. And I don't know what happened because I might be reading a book or just minding my own business until I get an angry employee coming up to me saying, like, what's wrong with you? Get off. And
Yeah.
I thought, and so because hearing loss is not visible, I've been told that I don't look deaf, whatever that may look like. And so I've learned to pick my battles over the years and I change what I can. So with regard to the mask in hospitals and elsewhere, I was able to get clear mask in hospitals, so it has just a clear window so I can lip read. And I brought live theater captioning to Canada so that when you attend a play, you can also see either up on an LED screen or on an app on your phone what is being said as well. And I do a lot of disability awareness training from both a legal and a lived experience, because inclusion is not just a nice thing to do, and accessibility is not just to help those people, it's the law.
That's commendable. Definitely gotta, give you your flowers for that one because there's a lot of work that you're putting in, and there's others that are putting in a lot of work as well. But it's so important when you see a need to actually go out there and not only for yourself, but for others as well, because there are people coming along. And just as you were talking about the story in the subway train, I'm thinking, how many times have I been in the subway? And you do sometimes you're tuned out because you may have your earphones in or whatever. There is really nothing visual that will come up to allow you to understand what's happening around you. So it's really important that we become more aware of these things as well. So good for you.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Those are some of the wins that you've taken away from, having being born deaf. But talk to us about some more wins because you've got a list of great things that you have done. You're a change maker, you're a way maker, you're all of the things. So talk to us about it.
Well, and I'll just say my list is long because I've been doing this a very long time. You
Yeah.
know, doing this work for 40 years. And as I mentioned, then added being a lawyer
Hmm.
on top of that. So it's been work that I feel called to do. Not everyone does it. That's okay. You can be a person with a disability or from any other marginalized group and not feel called to be a change maker within that marginalization, and that's okay. But it's also challenging because I have found that I'm often the pioneer. I'm the first one. I was raised with the maxim of find a hurt and heal it. So if ever I go through something that is difficult, I fight for myself, but I also fight for changes so that anyone coming after me doesn't have to do that fight again as well. But I'd like to say that when you're a pioneer, what's the image of a pioneer? Okay, so a pioneer is in a field behind the ox, leading the ox as they plow the field, and the ox is crapping in the field along the way. And so invariably you're stepping in it sometimes. But still I'm grateful to still have the enthusiasm to do this. Some days are hard. Um, when I do receive an award or an honor or recognition, it's very nice on that particular day to rest on my laurels, so to speak. But that day comes and goes. And then I'm thinking about, okay, what do I have still to do? And I'm always surprised when I hear an introduction and think, oh, yeah, I did get that. And I did get this. And oh, that was a fun night because I've already forgotten about them. I'm busy. I've moved on. So, according to like, what are some other wins? So I'm very proud of the work that I did to bring about the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. And that was actually 20 years ago today
Wow.
that I organized a symposium to convince the provincial government to create stronger disability legislation. And within 9 months of that symposium that was held at Western University. At the end of my first week of law school, the AODA came into being and was law. And so I'm really pleased about the small role I played in that. And I was also involved in creating standards for customer service and for healthcare. So that's one win that was personal, but it was a great opportunity to see how the law is made while I was a very new law student.
Mm.
And then as a human rights lawyer, I had a case representing a client, a young woman who lived with spina bifida, so she uses forearm crutches to help her get around. And she was in a restaurant in Toronto, needed to use the restroom, and asked, where it was located. So where are most washrooms in any large, urban center? In the basement, right?
Mm.
So the employee looked at her, determined that she would fall down the stairs if she attempted to use the washroom, and physically barred her and said, no, you can't use the washroom. And so that was upsetting because you have to consider that if you need to use a washroom and you're not at home,
Right.
and or some other private space, you're out in public, what are your options for using a washroom? None of them respect dignity at all, do they? And so I crafted a very careful media strategy because I needed people to care.
Yeah.
And people don't care until it's relevant to them.
Yeah.
So this is all going back to that storytelling piece, right? And so I let people know that, where's the dignity? This is a basic human right. There are transgender use of washroom was a very important thing that was happening at that time, the right to use the washroom that matches your identity. There's blind people who need to use washroom, pregnant women, there's a whole range of people who need to use the washroom as a basic human need as well as a right. And so that story was picked up by Canadian press. The Toronto Star published a full-page story, front page story, with more on the inside page. It went viral around the world. And there was a lot of conversations at law schools and on radio and television and the media. And what happened is that it still took incident happened in August of 2016. It still took 4 years for the decision from the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario to be released that agreed that barring people with disability from using the washroom was discriminatory. And so that was a win because it got something on the books. Now there was something that people could rely on, saying no because of this case, this decision. So it was a win, but the restaurant owners had long shut down the restaurant. It couldn't be found. There were no damages to be collected for my client, but it gave her very important validation of what she experienced was not right.
Yeah.
And so I'm really pleased about that case. I wish it had gone differently, but considering that we were now into the beginning of COVID, still getting a decision, but I had to fight for it. I kept on them
Mm-hmm.
and said, waiting on a decision, move this forward, what's happening? And it still took 4 years. So at that point, I was very dismayed by the delays at the Human Rights Tribunal and decided I needed to step back a little. And it's okay to do that because I had clients who were very upset and I was upset. So I was trying to convey, don't hate the player, hate the game. But I didn't like the game any better, and I didn't want to be a player in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I shifted to creating a social enterprise called HearView, which was intended to address my frustration with not being able to attend live events because I needed captioning.
Mm-hmm.
And what would happen is I would request it, and I was always getting, no, it can't be done. Nobody's asked for it. It's too complicated. We don't know how it works. It's too much money. It's this, that, and the other thing. So I was fed up. And so I decided to create this social enterprise to first educate people that it's not only those people who live with hearing loss that benefit from captioning. There's people who have learning disability, people with English as a second language, people who may not have a hearing loss until they're in a large venue where the acoustic may not be very good. And so whenever going back to, the ground transportation, air transportation announcements that are made verbally, but I can't read it or see it, it's the same concept. Communication inclusion, to have a visual means of communication as well as a verbal means of communication means that everyone is included. So I picked about a dozen large women's events and said to them, I will provide the captioning at no cost. I will train your AV team. I will do everything. I'll be on the ground when the event happens. I will troubleshoot. I will do all of these things. All you need to say is yes. And of course, they were like, sure, because I knew once the captioning that would be projected on large screens on the stage, once women, for the most part, saw the caption, they would immediately recognize the value of it and would sell it for me.
Yeah.
So, and I'm a real big believer in the power of manifesting. And so what I was doing in June of 2019, I was reading a book, Michelle Obama's Becoming. Who hasn't read that book? And I was very inspired partway through because Michelle is a lawyer, as am I. But she was very disillusioned with working in a private law firm, decided to quit and then move into being counsel at a community hospital that aligned more with her values. And she said, that's okay. And it gave me permission to realize that, yes, it is okay. Your legal career doesn't need to be working on Bay Street as a corporate lawyer, working all those hours, getting all of the financial rewards that come with that. That's not for everybody. And it doesn't have to be.
Right.
So at that point, I closed the book and I thought, I'm going to create this social enterprise. I've kind of had it in my mind for a while. Within a month, I had it incorporated, had the name, logo designed, all of that. And then I also said at that time, and Michelle Obama is going to be Hearview's first client. So everybody's like, girl, you're crazy. You're crazy. What are you thinking? No way. No way. It's not going to happen. How? And I said, I don't know how, but I just believe it will happen. She had already finished her Canada promotional book tour. No plans to be back in Canada, but I believed. I don't know how to explain it any better. I just believed with every fiber of my being that it would happen. And then in September of 2019, it was announced that Michelle would be on a promotional tour not related to her book, but would be coming to Toronto and would be coming to Hamilton.
Wow.
So I went into action, got nowhere with Toronto. They were like, no, we don't want, she was appearing at a conference. And they said, no, it's just we don't want to do that. So I moved to Hamilton and I said, we have to do this. The mayor was on board, the venue was on board, but the promoter was not.
Oh, no?
And so it wasn't Michelle's organization, it was a promoter that was renting the venue to make this happen. The promoter was not on board. But the director of the CEO of the venue really believed in it. And he said, I'm going to keep trying. And I said, okay. And then 10 days before Michelle's appearance in Hamilton, I got the okay.
Look at
And Michelle became Hearview's first official event. It was before a limited audience because they wouldn't agree to put it on a big screen because they were worried about mistakes. This is not new technology. So it just made me a bit angry. But I had to pay for everything myself. And I just said, fine, I'll take the win because then I would always have bragging rights that Michelle Obama was my first client for Hairview. So after that, there were a number of events. Women's College Hospital, the Canadian Women's Foundation, a lot of events that signed on, thought were wowed by it and said, okay, we're going to hire your company to provide captioning moving forward. So that was all well and good. I had events booked to the end of 2020, but then in March of 2020, something happened that changed the world, shuttered live events, and everything I had booked was gone. And so silly me didn't put a global pandemic into my business plan. I don't know what I was thinking. But you know what? It was all good because I was able to demonstrate how within 5 months the culture can change. It can change. And I also realized that I was in this to create the impact, not to run a captioning agency. I'm a lawyer. I'm not, a captioning entrepreneur. That wasn't my thing. So I strongly believe that things happen as they should.
Right.
And the world transferred onto virtual platform. We saw a lot more. I mean, before 2020, how many people were ever using Zoom or GoToMeeting or anything like that? Now there's a plethora of options,
Yeah.
and many do have the captions included. And so I'm really proud of that. I keep the name that is for my consulting company because it's Hear View. So hear what I have to say and see why it's important for the training that I do, the speaking engagement, the writing, all of that is still relevant. So long answer to your short question about the wins, but I'm really proud of those because they each build on the other. And
Mhm.
I'm
Congratulations, because that is huge. First of all, manifestation, you know, is a real thing. Speaking things, focusing on things, visualizing things, all of these things are real. And that's why, we were talking a little bit earlier about the power of our words. The power of our words it's so important to make sure that we're putting certain things out there. Like you put that out
yeah.
there, you believed it, and it came to, that's like vision to fruition. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you know what? Manifestation is not easy. If
No.
it were easy, everyone would be doing it because so many people give up.
Yeah.
They manifest, and if it doesn't happen the next day or in a week from now, they just give up. But for me, it was such a divine, if you want to say, belief that this is what I've been called to do, and who better than Michelle Obama to start with? And I just never wavered in my belief, even when people told me, "You're dreaming too big, dream smaller." You
Mhm.
know, if 2 weeks before the event. It's not going to happen. No, it's not over till it's over.
Right.
Just, I'm sure a lot of people were thinking, "Oh man, she's going to be let down big time." But I never gave up, and I admit I really haven't had that experience again in the last 5 years. I'm working on something now, but it's hard work. You really have to stay focused and do that manifestation exercise every single day and believe with your everything that you have that it will happen, and it's hard work.
Manifestation is definitely hard work, but you got to believe, like you said, from the core, every single day, you got to believe it. Even with the naysayers, it's still possible. And look at you. You are definitely an example of the fact that manifestation works, but also to the definition of women empowerment. I feel like, you embody women empowerment. And even just reading Michelle Obama's book, you've seen how she was a lawyer. She decided to change lanes, and then she almost inspired you or helped you to make that decision for yourself to say, it's okay. I don't have to be the model image of what that might look like to somebody else. I can move on and do something else, and I can still be be great at what I'm doing. So talk to us about women empowerment and what it actually means to you.
So for me, women empowerment is the process of enabling women to have control over their own lives, to make decisions and participate fully in all aspects of society, including the social, economic, political, and cultural arenas. And it involves providing women with the tools and the education and the resources and the opportunities to pursue their goals and fulfill their potential without facing, this is where my interest comes in, facing discrimination, inequality, or barriers based on gender. So women empowerment is important for so many reasons that sometimes we don't realize how important it is. Gender equality, that creates more balanced and fair systems. Economic growth via access to education, employment, and financial resources. Improved health and well-being through being able to make informed choices about your health and the health of your family. And that will lead to better health outcomes, reduced poverty, and stronger communities. Promoting peace and stability. Because who are the peacemakers in the community? It's the women who play a critical role in peace building, conflict resolution, promoting social cohesion through their family and through their leadership roles. Because a lot of the times in a nuclear family unit, it's mom who is is making sure that peace and is restored within the home. Sometimes dad, but mostly I venture to say it's mom.
Right.
And social progress happens by bringing in diverse perspective to the table in leadership roles and in governance and innovation. And this leads to more inclusive policy, creative solutions, and progress in addressing even global challenges. Look at Greta Thunberg, a teenager, and she appeared before the UN to address climate change. And there is a group of women who are challenging the lack of accessibility on air transportation because a lot of people who travel on planes end up having their mobility devices, their wheelchairs, completely destroyed when they're thrown into the cargo hold and mishandled. And so a group of women from around the world are challenging hashtag right on flight. And so this is what women can do in terms of social progress. And then, of course, just the human rights piece of it, allowing women to have autonomy over their bodies and make personal decisions and live free from violence and coercion and discrimination. So we need to empower women to see that change happen.
Beautiful definition. I love it. And I love that question because every woman has their own piece to add to what empowerment means to them, especially between us ladies. It's so important for us to understand what your perspective is, what my perspective is, so that we can bounce off of each other and essentially empower each other. You know what I mean? It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely, because I will have a different perspective as a white woman living with a disability than you, who is a Black woman who may have other parts of your identity that are oppressive. And it's important that we recognize our own privilege, but also recognize the lack of privilege, perhaps in others. I never have to think about something because of the color of my skin. You can't get away from it. And so I need to recognize that I walk through life differently than you do, but your perspective is just as valuable as mine. And we need to empower each other so we can be allies to each other.
That's right. It's all about perspective and understanding each other so that we can help each other.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
important.
Yeah.
But you definitely are a leader. You've shown how you picked up a leadership role early in life and have just continued to, keep that torch lit as a lawyer now, and you said you're working on something right now. I can only imagine the greatness that you're manifesting at this time. You know what I mean? But talk to us about leadership, because manifesting, like you said, isn't easy, but leadership is not easy as well. And maintaining that leadership role takes a lot too. So talk to us about it.
Leadership first, it must align with my deep commitment to advocacy, inclusion, and accessibility. And the leadership is guiding others through example and using influence to create positive change and empowering those around you to rise above the barriers. And so, what I try to do as a leader is I focus on creating opportunities for people with disabilities. I mentor others. I advocate for systemic change, and particularly in the context of accessibility and human rights. So the leaders that I most respect are those who recognize their privilege, recognize their power, and are willing to use it. Not everybody who has power wants to share it. And so I really appreciate the women with power who have said, let me open the door for you. Let me introduce you to someone that I wouldn't have a hope of ever meeting, but this person, through knowing me and knowing the person I want to meet, is able to do that easily. Because really, what's the point of power if you only use it for yourself?
So true.
There's a lot who do, though. There's a lot who do. And but I respect the women who are willing to share their power because they remember what it was like when they did not have power.
Very important to think about. There's so many lessons that I would imagine you learned throughout your journey on helping others, learning new things about yourself. Talk to us about that. Some of the things, some of the experiences that maybe impacted you in great ways, that you've
And
learned some different things about yourself or about life.
I think the important thing is to follow your passion and success will follow. And because people think, oh, I have to do this job because it pays the bill, but I really hate it.
Mhm.
Well, then it's going to be a slog for you. Whereas if you follow your passion and something that you're good at and do it well, commit to excellence, and because that is is going to set you apart from others, and the success will come from doing that. And in the course of my work, what I've learned is that you have to be fearless when speaking out about injustice, but you cannot expect people to cheer for you
Hmm.
because what you are is a disruptor and you are disrupting power because those who do not have accessibility as a priority, there's a reason why.
Hmm.
Because it benefits them to keep things as they are and not accessible and not broaden that space to allow everyone to be part of it. And so it's interesting where I'm respected on the one hand for what I do, but some leaders are not a fan because they will be conciliatory if my ask is very small, if it's something that they can do easily without too much inconvenience. But as soon as I go back and say we need to do a deeper dive, because this is about more than just the initial ask, then they're not happy and they're not going to cheer for you.
That's huge. So how, if I may ask, how do you deal with that? Because not everybody is always going to be in your corner, but sometimes you need people in your corner. So how do you deal with that?
I'm a big fan of motivational quotes and inspirational sayings ever since I was a kid, because of course I was reading all those biographies and autobiographies from people from Helen Keller to JFK to everyone. And of course, they have quotes that live on. But the one that I really lean on is reminding myself that I can do hard things because I already have. And it's important to remember our wins when the times are tough, because we have the tools at our disposal to carry on. But oftentimes we forget the hardships we've already been through and how we coped. And I often say, quote Winston Churchill on this one, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Yeah.
Just get through it, because this too shall pass. So I kind of combined a whole bunch of them, because I am no stranger to tough times.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody is. I think everyone has a story that will bring you to your knees.
Yeah.
And I've had cancer. In fact, when I was at the Women of Empowerment Award last year, I had just finished about with cancer, with breast cancer. So when I gave my acceptance speech, I took a minute to address a room full of women to say this is what I have been through, and I had just finished treatment. And so, of course, lots of clapping. I'm not there for the clapping. I'm telling you that 1 in 8 women will have breast cancer in their lifetime. Early detection saves lives. Get your mammogram, do those self exams, act when something needs to be acted upon. And people were a bit silent
Mm-hmm.
about it. I guess they don't expect to have the harsh reality of breast cancer brought into an event that was about celebrating women. But why wouldn't I
It's necessary.
say that?
Yeah.
Because life is hard. And we're all in this together. And 1 in 8, so if there's 500 women in that room, you can bet that, oh, I didn't go to law school for math, so there's all there. But I'm going to say at least, maybe 40 or 50 women in that room either have had breast cancer or most certainly have experienced supporting someone with breast cancer. And so that that's what I've learned over the years, is that everyone's going through a struggle of some kind. Be kind, be kind again, and yet still be kind, because not everyone's comfortable sharing. But I just have the firm belief that because I've been through those hard times and I got through them, I need to reflect and remember that I have the resilience to get through this time, get through whatever's around the corner, support people who are going through tough times, because it's not easy.
My gosh, we have a real life superwoman right here on the show. I mean, oh my goodness, you definitely are an example to live by. Honestly, you are something else. I was not expecting that, and now my heart is like, oh my gosh, it's like you've checked all the boxes now. My God,
Uh,
like honestly, that's so. If you don't mind us asking now, how are you going with, or how is things going with your cancer battle with the breast cancer?
treatment in October of 2022. Everything is fine. So just carry on. Of course, there's surveillance. You're not cancer free until 5 years have passed. But I'm fortunate to live in Toronto, just down the street from Princess Margaret Cancer Center, a world renowned cancer center. So, and when you share your story, you connect with others and you realize how prevalent it is out there. My mom had breast cancer, but she was no longer alive. She passed not because of breast cancer. She passed in 2018, 6 years ago, earlier this month. But I found my mother's breast cancer diary at the time that I was going through my own, and we both had cancer in the same breast, in the same location, but 20 years apart. So it was very interesting to see and marvel at the changes
Hmm.
in treatment from 20 years ago to now. And it's just life, and you just carry on. I think cancer is so prevalent. Everyone has a family member, a loved one themselves, a colleague, someone who has had cancer, and it's just an unfortunate part of living.
My gosh, well, we're happy to hear that you are doing well, and we can't wait to celebrate when that 5 years comes up,
Sure.
and put that into our visualization and, manifest all of that great stuff, great health. So that's beautiful. Wow. Okay. So, I mean, you are representation, you are visibility. It's very essential. It's something that we definitely need to make sure that we are constantly seeing in our world, especially as women. Um, Talk to us about the commitment that you have as a woman to inclusion and accessibility.
Well, so as a lawyer living with a disability, I'm very aware of being a role model and I take it seriously. You can't be what you can't see, right? And so I've mentored law students and young new lawyers for a decade or more. And I strive for progress in my own way as someone committed to inclusion and accessibility through my advocacy and leadership, breaking down barriers, having empathy and understanding, promoting equality, which is a big part of what I do, and creating accessible spaces and mentorship, as I just mentioned, and support. And also, I'm very big on intersectional awareness because no one is one identity.
Mm,
And you are not just a mom, or you're not just, a lawyer, or you have multiple layers to your identity. But when those layers come from marginalized groups, those layers then create oppression, and it's heavy.
mm,
It's heavy, and we need to recognize that. So I'm always trying to educate people that I'm a disabled white woman. My experiences are going to be very different from a disabled Indigenous woman who is a single mom, who is, lived with domestic violence or all of things. Those layers of oppression are going to be different. So I try to educate people about that. And also resilience and perseverance, because people with disability, we have been forced to be resilient and persevere because we've had to. We've had to learn how to be creative and how to be resilient and how to be problem solvers and do time management, because we do so much throughout the course of our day just to do ordinary things that are extraordinarily difficult because of the barriers that are in place.
mm,
So someone who is a wheelchair user needs to get to work. They need to figure out, is Wheel-Trans coming? Or am I going to take the subway? Is it an accessible station? What things do they need? And so employers need to recognize that those are transferable traits. And so I really try and do that in the course of my day, because I take that responsibility very, I don't treat it lightly. And I just feel it's important for us to share our knowledge to make things easier for those who are walking alongside us, but also who follow.
You're a very interesting individual. I could definitely see you putting out your own autobiography, later on in life, and people indulging in that and being extremely motivated and inspired by all of the things that you've done. 100%. Because I
So,
feel like everybody's story is so interesting. Everybody's story is equally as important. But there are some stories that impact us in more profound ways, and you definitely are very inspirational.
thank you. Yeah, and people will say, "Oh, you're so inspiring," after I do a keynote or whatever. And I'll say, "Thank you. But what am I inspiring you to do? I don't want you walking out of the room thinking, oh, she was so inspiring because she's done this, that, and the other thing. I could never do all those things." Yes, you can. Yes, you can. So I want to hear, what have I inspired you to do? What is the small thing you're going to do to make your corner of the world more accessible? How are you going to be an ally? for people with disabilities based on what you've learned from me. So that's really what I try to say to people who say, oh, you're so inspiring, knowing that people don't mean it in a negative way, but I want it to be not a comment, but a call to action.
And it's definitely impactful because you are not only inspiring in the things that you say, but there's an action that's been taken there. So it kind of it's almost pressed upon me myself now to go into my book of ideas and things that I haven't actually, worked on in a little bit to kind of move them to the forefront of my board and make sure that they are take care of them and I get them done. So
Wonderful, my work is done. Yay. A
awesome.
little like rocket ship and everything, great stuff.
Yes, 100%. So before we wrap this up, I do want to ask you, I know you gave us so many quotes, so many different things, but leave us with a piece of advice that you might give to somebody who's out there that is looking to maybe move in a different direction, inspire somebody such as yourself, but more so push themselves to be more inclusive, to be more diverse.
Yeah, and the one thing I say, because we live in a very different world where social media reigns supreme,
Right,
and there are so many influencers with disabilities that you can follow
right,
on social media. Diversify your feed, because if you only follow people who look and sound just like you're not learning anything.
right.
And so really change up your feed and be open to learning, and also amplify when you do see a post that is from an influencer with a disability that really resonates with you. Like it, share it, repost it, all the different ways that you can, because it's important to provide that amplification if you have privilege that the influencer may not. And so that's something that I really try to tell people. And I always tell people as well that you will mess up when it comes to how to be a disability ally. You're going to mess up, guaranteed. Give yourself grace, learn from it, and then commit to not repeating that, and then just move forward. As I mentioned Maya Angelou earlier, perhaps when we were talking or during the podcast, that when you know better, do better. It's that simple. Don't get all hung up on it. And it's also very important to, speak up, but not over. So you want to be supporting people with disabilities, but you do not want to take over and control the narrative. That is their story to tell. And I do have friends that do that. For me, they'll just automatically say to someone, oh, she can't hear. She lip reads. And I'm like, wait a minute, why don't you just say, oh, this person's trying to talk to you, but you weren't facing them and they don't know. Then I'm perfectly capable of saying, oh, I'm sorry, I missed what you said because, and then don't automatically say, oh, I'm so sorry, that you can't hear. What? It just, I can't hear. It's just that simple. There's nothing to be sorry for. And just be really mindful of the words that you use, like we were talking about earlier. So there's lots of ways to give support. And so those are the advice. Now, specific to lawyers, though, is I think for those who are lawyers, maybe new to the profession, it's very important to find your support system early in your career, because this is a tough career. No question about it. And also give back, because we are privileged to be lawyers and we are trained to provide clarity in a world that seems to be very devoid of clarity sometimes. And so those are just some of the things that I would say. Did that kind of follow in line with what you were thinking?
That is 100% in line with what I was thinking. Thank you so much, Lauren. It's been a pleasure chatting. I can't wait to meet you in person so that we can hug and, continue to have this conversation because it's great.
Yes, bring it on.
All right, we'll talk soon, okay?
Thank you so much for having me.